Flags are down, harness on, okay in the back?
Yeah, I'm secure, doors secure.
In the summer of 2017, the Helicopter Emergency Medical Service took to the skies of Northern Ireland. Its highly trained team of medics can respond to a 999 call within seconds and reach the scene of an emergency within minutes.
Whenever you look at Northern Ireland, there's a lot of rural space, there's a lot of agriculture out there, and trauma isn't limited to in and around Belfast. I think the helicopter levels the playing field to a degree. It allows us to get out to those patients quickly.
From our base, we can get to anywhere in the country within about 30 minutes.
The car has left the road numerous times to be unsafe.
The heart of everything we do is time. Time is brain, time is life, and time is limb. If we can get there early, that patient has a really good chance of survival.
Bringing rapid critical care to the scene of an incident. For patients, the helicopter and its team can mean the difference between life and death.
It's not about the helicopter. What you're doing, you're delivering the team to the scene of an accident.
You're bringing consultant-level care with the doctors and obviously the experience of the paramedic together.
One female casualty, currently trapped. Fire service are putting her out.
We have certain skills in anaesthesia and emergency department that we can actually take out and deliver to the patient.
You're all right now, you're just coming around. You're okay, big fella. Just relax. My name's Aidan, I'm one of the doctors.
We feel we can provide that 30, 40 minutes in advance of what they would normally be getting if they were just brought straight to a hospital.
More.
There was no air ambulance in Northern Ireland. It was one of the few places in the whole of Europe that didn't have a service. There was no question that it was needed.
Ready, steady, lift.
It just took a bit of work to get the service in place.
This is the story of how the dream of an air ambulance in Northern Ireland became a reality. How that crucial service has its roots in one of our most popular but dangerous sports. And how it owes so much to one man's determination to save lives.
Good morning. We were both medical students at Queen's. We were in the same year. John, he was very friendly with a very good friend of mine, so we sort of ended up in the same social group. It just gradually happened. It was a very gradual thing, very much friends first. Very, very quickly we realised this is something special, this is long term. And that was when we were 20, so it was. So third year medical school. So this is John's study. This is where he would have worked from home. This is where he would have seen, the racers will probably recognise it. They've been on that couch a few times getting their examinations for their road racing licences, and I suppose it was generally regarded as John's man cave. He'll probably be very upset that I've now moved in, and it's now I regard it as our office. It's nice to have his things around me. It gives me comfort, so it does. When he got this stand for his leathers, he was so pleased, because there's very few things will actually hold leathers because they're so heavy. And then whenever he got his flight suit, so this is sort of the one that would have been on the hems if he'd been ever on one, and whenever he went over to London and Sydney and stuff, he would have brought this with him. And that's the medical bag he bought me. So it is for, you're only as good as the equipment you carry, is what he would have said. We both very much wanted to do medicine. For John, it was medicine because he wanted to help people, but he liked the idea that no human body was exactly the same. So there was always had to be a thinking element to it. And it was really the interaction then that John saw in ICU with the doctors, the nurses, all the professions allied to medicine. And that, I think, was what really galvanised it. I want to do this. I want to be an anaesthetist. I want to be an intensivist. I want to work in intensive care. I want to work at the cutting edge, I suppose. he always liked bikes. He always followed the bikes. I think it came from nowhere. It wasn't like it was a family that followed road racing. It was very much something that he had a passion for. This is quite a good photograph, I think, of John, taken by, again, our good friend Joe Conley, and he always says it's not the best photograph, and I said, no, I completely disagree, because it completely captures to me John, because he's looking at his close friend and, you know, saying hello, really.
Road racing. It's one of Northern Ireland's most popular sports, but one in which the risk of serious injury, or worse, is ever present.
Road racing is a very dangerous sport. It's run on closed public roads. You can't do anything about the trees and stone walls and and curbs and all those things. So accidents happen. They happen quite frequently, and the outcome of those accidents will always be almost a complete unknown.
Always ready to respond to a road racing accident are the motorcycle medics, or the flying doctors as they are known within the sport. Doctors who treat the general public during the week, but on race days, provide a rapid and critical service for the riders.
We could see the need for immediate intervention to make the difference to a seriously injured rider surviving or not in the first instance, and then to minimize any long-term disability.
The role at that particular time was very much to try and provide what was described as pre-hospital care, which was very much in its infancy at that stage. So what you were really doing is you were effectively taking what you would use in hospital and taking it out into the field. You carried enough equipment to try and correct those real life-threatening situations like an obstructed airway, catastrophic hemorrhage, collapsing lung. We could see that it was starting to make a difference because there were, even in the early stages, there were some very critical injuries that we managed to stabilise and get riders to hospital.
We were the only people who were using these techniques and interventions and range of drugs and so on outside of hospital at that time. The things that were introduced by us at the road races are now almost standard treatments and equipment that's used by the paramedics in the ambulance service and, dare I say it, in hospital emergency departments.
As an ambitious medical student and a motorcycle enthusiast, County Down man John Hines was eager to join the ranks of road racing's flying doctors.
John, he'd been to a few races and saw some of the stuff they were doing and thought, you know, this could interest me, I could actually help here. And then he went to Fred as, I think at that stage, a third-year medical student and said, you know, what do you need medical-wise? And, you know, I'm thinking of doing anaesthetics and intensive care. And Fred said, well, yeah, that's exactly what we need. That's what we're missing. You know, the two other docs in the team at that stage were both, I think, GPs and maybe a cardiologist. So he said, you know, an anaesthetist would be brilliant. So that galvanised John again as, yeah, no, anaesthetics is definitely where I want. So as soon as he qualified, you know, he was back on Fred's door.
He very quickly had the role of sort of almost like a gopher. He got to know where everything in the kit and in the backup van or car was, and so you'd say oxygen, boom, you know, he would have it. You know, give me some ET tubes, boom, he'd have it, and you know, so after a while, then he was nearly sort of working out what you need. So you'd sort of think, give me, and next thing, you know, it was on your hand. I remember thinking, this guy's sharp. He knows his stuff. So he was, for me, the wonderful combination because he was damn quick on a bike and he had a fabulous pair of hands and he had a brilliant brain. Even as a junior anaesthetist in training, it was obvious this guy was exceptional.
Hospital medicine has become very full of protocols and guidelines, but out here it's a wee bit more seat of your pants medicine nearly, and it's very much rewarding to be able to treat people that way. Well, you don't have a sterile operating field and you're not in a resuscitation bay, you're very often in a ditch somewhere, so it's totally different. But that's where the experience of the team we're working with comes in, and these guys really have seen it all.
He definitely had potential in terms of his competence and his enthusiasm, and he was a very keen motorcyclist. He went from being our student, if you like, to him bringing a level of expertise to what we were doing. The role was reversed, and he, became our mentor, and we learnt, as much and indeed more from him.
There was always John and Fred who were on motorcycles, and on the opening lap of any race they would follow the riders around. So it was literally the fastest response time of any medical crew in the world. And I think for the people who race, there was a great reassurance in that. They knew that those guys had their back.
I have 3 sons and a daughter, and we live in Hilltown. Callum's my second son. He can be a bit shy at times and mischievous and happy-go-lucky, On the day of the accident, he was farming with his uncle. He loves farming, and I love him going, him and his brother, because they're not sitting about the house. They're occupied doing something useful, and they have great crack.
I was in Cookhill in a field, and I had went down to check on the calf to make sure it was getting the milk from the mother. I opened the gate to let the tractor on through into the field, and I closed it behind me, and then I hopped on the back of the block weight. We were driving up close to the cow. We hit a bump, and I just dropped in, and my leg fell into a big spike. I went to lift up my leg, and all I saw was just a big gloop of blood just run down my leg onto the floor. And that's when I really started panicking and freaking out.
When the call came, I was standing in the hall, and I just grabbed the keys and went straight to the car. I was in real panic. I thought, when I get here, he is likely to be dead.
Farms are dangerous areas. We realised from a very early stage in the service that if somebody does get injured on a farm, there is huge potential for serious injuries there. We decided that one of our, what we call an immediate call-out criteria would be, as soon as we hear it's an incident on a farm, we would make ready to go. A lot of the time, farming incidents are in very rural areas. You'll often find that when a call comes through to the ambulance service, the land services can often be quite a distance from the farm, so it can take them quite a while to get there. We can get airborne and travel at high speed in a straight line, and we will often get there even before the land services do arrive.
In my opinion, the paramedics had by far the most challenging training to complete, as well as having their medical hats on. They had to come to terms with all of this aviation. The paramedic, who generally sits up front with the pilot, is of huge assistance. They help us to navigate, they operate some of the radios. As well as doing their medical job, they're a huge, huge help to the pilot.
When I arrived, as soon as I saw Colin, I knew it was a very serious leg injury. His leg was just torn open. It was a question of getting the help in at that stage to, you know, keep the damage to a minimum. I remember it coming down into this really, really green field, and there was some sort of farm machinery. It was bright yellow, and the sky was bright blue, and this bright red ambulance landed in. It was absolutely beautiful. I wish I had taken a picture of it, but I was so glad to see it.
I think when you arrive, there's a great expectation from the patient towards you as well to be sort of calm and professional.
How's it going? You in a lot of pain, Billy?
Yeah.
What's your name?
Colin.
Colin, all right.
Me getting out and running about like a headless chicken isn't going to really achieve that. So it is calm, professional approach, trying to you know, reassure your patient, make sure they're aware that you're here for them, you're going to deliver that care, you're going to help them, and you stay with them throughout that process.
So you have a bit of a gash there, okay? But you know what, that's easily fixed, okay? It'll give it a good clean out in the hospital and they'll be able to stitch that back together again for you, okay? Now obviously it'll need to be x-ray too, okay?
They were very good to Colin, you know, they just kept him talking, and they talked him through everything that was happening and just reassured him.
You not got a phone, you'd be taking selfies of yourself? No? Getting treated and all?
Left it back in the Jeep.
You left it in the Jeep? Can someone run over and get it for you?
People can react superbly when they find themselves in horrible situations. You'd be amazed. You can have a laugh and a joke and a giggle with somebody who's trapped, and keep them calm, keep them reassured, and look after them until we can get them out of the horrible situation that they've found themselves in.
They were like really nice, like, and they were all like trying to calm you down and having the laugh with you. And I was having the laugh with them because I was in so much pain that I actually couldn't feel the pain, if you know what I mean.
That's it, good man, that's you. That's it, perfect.
Okay.
All right, I'll go you back again.
My mum wasn't allowed on the helicopter, and that sort of freaked me out at the time.
Yep. So we lift up high, 2/3 and lay down.
I just remember his wee pale face in the blankets and him going in, and he was looking at me, and I knew he would have liked me to go with him, but yeah, they were very good to him.
When I got in the helicopter, it was just lethal. Like, you could hear the big whoop, 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 whoop of the helicopter, like. And I was really hoping it wasn't broke because, like, it was near the end of summer and I didn't want to be sitting in the house all day, like. It was broke. I think it sort of affected me in the head because I was in the house for about 3 months, not talking to anyone.
It took, I think, 12 or 14 weeks before we got the cast off and he could get back to school. 10 months later, he's recently finished his physiotherapy, but his leg can still get a bit tired and that. His dog was a great help to him during his recovery. And he said a few times he wouldn't have got through it without Leo.
In dog years, he's 14, so he's about my age, so I say he's my best mate, like.
His injury wasn't life-threatening, but it was very, very serious. And I don't know what effect that may have had on his recovery to have waited, but I do know that it would have had a serious effect on his, you know, panic levels at that time. It very much helped us that we were able to get him to hospital quickly and be reassured as quickly as we did.
By 2003, John Hines was a motorcycle medic at Irish road races and an experienced anaesthetist working in intensive care. He had also begun to see ways in which trauma care in Northern Ireland could and should be improved.
He had a 360 view of trauma, so he was uniquely qualified and the very person to realise that there were big holes in the system in Northern Ireland. We had led the way in the 70s. Northern Ireland was really at the forefront of medical innovation because we were suffering the dreadful sort of troubles. We'd fallen way behind in the provision of trauma. And if you were involved in a road traffic accident in the Belfast area, you might get to hospital pretty quick. But if you were stuck in a car in Pomeroy or underneath a tractor, these people weren't doing as well. Even when they got to places like Craigavon and Altnagelvin or Enniskillen, trying to get someone in Belfast to take notice of them and get them up rapidly. John used to spend hours on the phone trying to get these critically ill people to be accepted properly, because there really wasn't a regional trauma network. There wasn't joined up thinking. A lot of people don't realise, they think he's the doctor went out on the motorbike and he helped set up the helicopter, but he did a huge amount of work, as well as other colleagues around, but in highlighting that we had fallen way behind in having a coordinated regional trauma network service.
John told me this one time, he was always drawn to the extremes of medicine, to the acute situation. And the really important thing in that is the speed of response. And he saw that time and time again beside the track. But he felt that that should be extended to everyone else, not just road racers, all of us, in all kinds of situations, you know.
For John, the way to extend such rapid response care beyond road racing was the establishment of a HEMS, the Helicopter Emergency Medical Service, an opinion that was reinforced by a trip to Australia with his partner Janet.
Around that time, we went out to Sydney HEMS. It really proved to him this is what I want to do. I thought, oh gosh, we're moving to Sydney. But he said, no, we'll do this in Northern Ireland. And we did have a conversation of, this will not be an easy road. You know, developing a new service, took years to get any traction in London. We came home from that and he'd made some very good friends and contacts who wanted to help him develop something in Northern Ireland. And that's where he started knocking on doors. Typical John, he was up for the challenge.
My name is Sean Atwood, born and bred in the UK, originally from Gloucestershire. Currently living here in Newcastle in County Down for just over a year and a half. I love music, I write music, I play guitar, but equally I have a passion and an interest following any two-wheel sport on the TV, MotoGP, World Superbike. Passed my bike test well before my car test. I think it's in your blood a little bit. For me, it was all about the freedom, the opportunity to think about things, but more importantly, being able to enjoy a lot of the roads in the area as well. It was a Sunday afternoon, lovely dry afternoon. I'd been doing some work in the house and I thought, okay, it's a great time to just take an hour out on the bike. Made sure that I put all the appropriate gear on, helmet down to toes. Took the bike out, and as I was approaching a junction, I saw a car pulling up, so I started to slow down. As I approached the car, he started to edge forward and I thought, no, you're not going to do this, surely. And I was literally 4 or 5 feet away and he pulled straight out in front of me. I hit the car across the top of the front wheel arch. I remember my helmet hitting the windscreen, me bouncing off the windscreen and pirouetting literally in the air. And landing on my back very, very awkwardly, and my arm as well.
Doesn't matter what call we get, I think the heart rate level is always up a little bit. But undoubtedly, motorcyclists have a potential to be seriously injured.
I think this guy's going to need oil, even if he's pretty stable. Definitely going to need some TXA, probably going to need a pelvic binder on. We'll spoil this day by cutting his leathers as well, won't we? Yeah.
You start to worry about nasty head injuries, neck injuries, and really anything from head to foot can happen.
And there it is. See it on our nose? See flashing lights.
They all wear great safety equipment, but you know, whenever you come to a short stop and you have, you know, you don't have the benefits of a seatbelt or an airbag, the potential for injury goes up.
Roger, location identified, just going to do it over.
It didn't seem that long before I could hear the helicopter going overhead. At that point, I thought, this is serious.
Sean, how you doing? My name's Rob. I'm one of the docs. Nice to meet you, mate. We're going to take good care of you, all right?
Yeah, just guys will get you sorted.
Whereabouts is the worst pain for you at the minute, buddy? It's your wrist. That's the bit that's really hurting you the most. Is that okay? We're going to get you something a bit extra for pain relief. We'll try and get you wrapped up warm, okay? The skill set is very much one that we use in the hospital. But if I compare to what I have in resus in the hospital, you know, the patients come in nicely packaged up on a trolley, they're warm, they're dry, and you move that now to a scene that, you know, we're now trying to carry these interventions out in the cold, in the wet, maybe restricted by a patient who's trapped in a car, you might be in a ditch, you might be in a field, and all of those things provide a real challenge as to how you do these things.
1, 2, 3, roll.
Fair play. Yeah. You have to get all these things right before you're in the helicopter. You know, you have to make these interventions, you have to get these problems identified, have your plan A and plan B, because once you're in the helicopter, there's not a lot of room to work, and you want to be ahead of the curve. Is that sore, buddy?
When you look at an air ambulance service, you've got two modalities. You've got the process of delivering care in a timely fashion, which is getting the clinician on the ground with the paramedic as soon as possible to aid the ground paramedics that are already on the scene. The second modality is being able to take that patient in a timely manner and bring them quickly to the place that they need to be.
I'm just conscious of the fact it's a pretty crappy day and the roads aren't great out here. If we put them in the back of the helicopter and take them up, transfer time actually won't be that much quicker, but it will be a wee bit.
1, 2, 3, left. Oh.
We talk a lot about the golden hour of delivering that care, and we know that if we can get there and deliver those life-saving interventions within a short space of time, that it really does improve morbidity and the mortality associated with major trauma.
There is no doubt in my mind that the air ambulance on that day saved me. The idea of bringing the emergency department to me in the middle of that road is just unbelievable. If that accident happened a month earlier, they would not have been there. The point of where I bounced off the car onto the road until when I was being pushed into the CT scanner, it was less than an hour. We always hear about that golden hour, and that was so important to hear, and I think that was one of the big contributory facts to helping my recovery and dealing with the trauma. I'd had significant damage to my arm, broken in a number of places, and my back was broken in 2 places. I'd torn cruciate ligament in my left knee, bruised lungs. People do remind me that, Sean, you were very, very lucky. And I take that on board because I clearly was. I have no fear of bikes. I could not have legislated what happened on that day. I still see the bikes here in Newcastle. I still watch the TV. And sometimes the hair on the back of my neck does stand up on end. But the reality is I think I'll probably stay away from them.
With the ambulance service already engaged in discussions and a local charity, Air Ambulance Northern Ireland, seeking funding, John Hines' vision for such a service was gaining momentum. But there were still significant obstacles to overcome if it were to become a reality.
There was a recognition that this would be beneficial, but the big question was how this was going to be funded. Not just to establish the service, but to maintain the service so that it was a sustainable service. Really, we needed a very detailed planning to establish the necessary infrastructure and to link across to the health service and how the provision of such a service would dovetail in to overall health care provision. This was being worked on, and not least of all the Air Ambulance Northern Ireland charity, the trustees of whom had made a very formal and detailed proposal to a number of us from the ambulance service, the wider health service, involving politicians. This had been the most substantial, most detailed proposal that there had been at that time.
There's about 32 helicopters that operate a HEM service throughout England, Scotland and Wales. And on a bigger extent, thinking about Greater Europe, Northern Ireland was the last remaining part of Western Europe that didn't have an air ambulance service or a helicopter emergency medical service. Why should we not have that level of care? And it was through that was a driving force. One, we were tasked with doing something from a charitable point of view. Then it became an obsession and a passion with a lot of us that we've got to deliver that. And there were a lot of obstacles at the beginning.
There was a need for initial funding support for this, so this was being discussed around that time when John became more and more convinced and more vocal in his support.
He had a very logical argument, and the logical argument is people are dying unnecessarily. It's not as expensive as you think it will be, and everybody else has it. So what's the problem?
He found it extremely frustrating. Generally, particularly in anaesthetics, he's used to things happening, quickly and controlling the pace, and obviously with this, it's completely out of his control. And all the time, people were dying, and that was what really made him angry.
I work as a stonemason in Kingsbridge.
That looks like a stonemason's yard down there, guys. That's a positive, yeah. That's it there, guys.
It was a Tuesday morning. We had a delivery. It arrived late and started unloading the slabs in bundles.
I do see an ambulance down the 1 o'clock low.
Instead of going back and leaning on the A-frame, the 10 slabs came forward and ended up on top of me on the ground. I think shock had set in straight away, and I didn't feel any pain or anything. It was surprisingly calm. We got the first set off because they broke down the middle. And when we got that set off, that's when we realised my ankles were still trapped.
The guy's not trapped. The slab of marble is now off his ankle, but it's obviously deformed.
When they got rid of the last slab that was on top of my waist is the first time that we noticed that there was definitely something wrong with my foot. It wasn't sitting right. You could tell just by the shape of it and the way it was trapped, it wasn't sitting the way a foot is supposed to sit.
Hi, gents, all right? Hi, guys. Hello. The key thing in my mind approaching a scene is just that we call it the human factor, so it's the team dynamic, because pre-hospital care is a team sport. So if we've got the ambulance crew on scene, it's straight away we'll get a handover from the paramedic or the technician, whoever's there. I will always introduce myself and get the names of everybody on scene. That just ensures everything from that point on should run nice and smooth. Lovely. So what's the plan, guys? A little bit of ketamine, that'll be enough, and then we can pull the fracture, get it realigned nice and straight. Yeah. And then we'll get this on.
We're tending scenes where patients have broken limbs. Sometimes part of the treatment fat is straightening those legs out. So we carry a lot of very strong painkillers that allows us to ensure the patient's good deal of comfort straightening those limbs out, because that alone will benefit that patient. It reduces any bleeding around the fracture site. And also by having a broken limb aligned to normal position, it feels more comfortable for the patient, ensuring that the circulation is good around that leg.
Okay, my man, listen, this is another drug called ketamine, okay? It's a little bit stronger.
I literally turned to talk to one of the guys and turned back, and the guy already had my foot sitting straight again. He was holding it steady, waiting to get it into the support so it would be kept still the whole journey.
All right.
They realised it would actually be slightly quicker to take me in the road ambulance to Craigavon Hospital than it would be for the air ambulance to fly me to Belfast. I had dislocated the ankle and broke the leg in 2 places. I had to get the bone put back in the right place and secured there so it could heal up, so I still have a metal plate and 6 screws in the lower part of my leg. Really grateful to the crew. They managed to keep me calm the whole way through it. Like I say, if they hadn't showed up whenever they did, it probably would have been a harder job for any other paramedic that arrived, because I would have been in a lot more pain. Like, they were just able to respond that quickly. They could never thank them enough for it.
While discussions over the planning and funding of an air ambulance continued, John Hines became increasingly conscious that vital time was passing, and he looked for support beyond Northern Ireland.
His friends around the world very much kept him on point and said, look, yes, it's hard, but we'll keep going. They helped him come up with other angles, etc. In some ways, he was waiting for an inevitable incident that was going to happen, that was going to spark, the public's attention to shine the necessary light on the topic. And the Northwest in 2015 and Violet McAfee's accident was really that catalyst.
Violet McAfee was watching the race with friends when one of the bikes broke apart, hitting a car and then her.
On those occasions, you could see that there wasn't a dedicated service, and someone had to go to hospital, and there was a delay and so on there, that gap had to be plugged. They had to call in the Irish Coast Guard helicopter.
It was a HAMS response, effectively, because that's what the MCUI medical team provide at the roadside for the racers, and that was able to be used that day. And the Irish Coast Guard were able to provide the platform to get the patient to the right hospital, which at that stage would have been the Royal as the major trauma centre. So he was good because it was life saved.
As Violet McAfee's accident attracted the attention of the media, John seized the opportunity to publicise the benefits of an air ambulance service.
It would be a real game changer. We know that other countries that have implemented this system and have published their outcomes, they've reduced trauma deaths consistently up to 40%. We know from some of the ones operating in the rest of the UK that the savings that they have in terms of reduced bed days, reduced morbidity, reduced secondary transfers, is anything up to £20 million. So this should be seen as a cost-effective method of dealing with major trauma patients.
He then got the call from an MLA to say, I'm actually interested in this. I actually want to take this forward, and very, very quickly had a meeting with him. Finally, doors were opening, and they were opening really, really quickly. That really exhilarated John. He finally thought he'd got the traction he needed to get this over the line.
I can put it to the back of my mind most of the time until I hear a bike. And then I wish I was on it. I miss it. I really do miss it. I owe my life to their ambulance. My father rode bikes. We knew a lot of the bike racers living close to Kirkuson. Our house, in fact, became a sort of tea house for a lot of them. So naturally, I wasn't allowed a bike. It wasn't until I retired. My brother and his friends were all Harley Davidson riders. I started to hang around with a few of them, went to a few Harley Davidson rallies. I'm not the fastest rider in the world, although I do push on at times. Like any biker, there's the thrill of a good corner. When you're going down the road, you're part of the countryside. You're part of this earth. You're alive on a motorbike. There was a Harley Davidson rally on in Newcastle, and I did what I always do. I checked the tires, checked the lights. I'd put a new clutch cable in, checked it was working properly, altered the mirrors, basically made sure the bike was safe. I can remember about 9 o'clock opening the front door. I have no more memories after that until I woke up in hospital, and that was almost 2 months later.
There's a sense some people have that when we get that call, there's an exhilaration and an excitement. It's anything but. Trauma is horrible. You make no mistake about it. Trauma is horrific. It's horrific for those who've witnessed it. It's horrific for the patient at the centre of it. And the team that are going to it, it's not particularly pleasant either, but we know that we can make things better.
Yeah, just like towards Ballywalter, it should be 085 from where we are.
There is a sense of seriousness, and there is a sense of let's do our absolute best here. There's certainly no superhero moment going on, let me be clear about that.
And you'll see your access point coming up there, Aidan and the gate. Yeah, roger that.
The importance of the air ambulance is about getting those clinical interventions quickly to the patient and stop that dying process, because a lot of the times when we actually have arrived with the patient, they've already entered into a process of dying, and we want to try and slow that down as best as we can.
We bring drugs, we bring equipment, and we're able to anaesthetise, put that patient to sleep at that particular moment, start their intensive care management, start their emergency medicine management, and really take over the management of their body systems and support their body systems in that moment where there's huge stress being placed on them.
It's a bit of a height difference here, it's slightly taller, all right. And if we can go 3/4 the way in, not fully.
To minimise the delay in doing that is the key. We feel we can provide that 30-40 minutes in advance of what they would normally be getting if they were just brought straight to a hospital.
It was decided, because of my injuries, that I had to go to the Royal. To get an ambulance down to Ballywalter, to get me up to the Royal, at the very least, another half hour, maybe 3/4 of an hour. And I wouldn't have lost it. I'd broken my left arm. That's got a plate and 6 screws, I think. My right arm has a plate and 7 screws. 1 rib on the left-hand side, 7 on the right-hand side. Perforated lungs. Shoulder blade broken. Broken bones in my neck. 2 brain bleeds. My arm is dead. I can do very little. Certainly it has stopped the motorcycling dead, totally dead. Everybody I have spoken to, ambulance men, doctors, say, really, I shouldn't be alive. but I'm here still complaining. An air ambulance is an absolute necessity.
While Violet McAfee's accident at the 2015 Northwest 200 had added momentum to the campaign for an air ambulance, John continued his work as a motorcycle medic. And just 2 months later, he was on duty once again at the Skerries Road races, north of Dublin.
Skerries is always the Friday, Saturday. Most southern races are the Saturday, Sunday. But Skerries would be the one exception. That particular day, I was on call in my job as an obstetrician in Daisy Hill in Newry, so I wasn't going down with them on the Friday, but we'd made plans that if the weather was good, which it was, that I would come down on the Saturday. I went to work on Friday morning, said goodbye to him, and my mum actually remembers that he went past in his van, having loaded up the bikes, I think about 10 o'clock, which would have been his normal time, and we tooted the horn and gave her a big wave, and sort of on he went.
It was practice. It was a Friday. John was doing what he always did. He was on the bike throughout the day. He was following the different waves of riders going out. He would circulate behind them, and then he would pull in at the end of the lap. He was travelling fast. John liked riding fast. But there was a purpose to it, because the faster he was, the more able he was to keep up with the guys, then the quicker he would be on the scene of anything that went wrong. As I understand it, he was on a lap and he came down through the start and finish around Finnegan's Corner and out onto the lap again, and the crash happened a bit further down the road.
As a result of his crash, John suffered multiple traumatic injuries.
It was a lovely summer evening, and I got a phone call. It's just my wife and I were sitting having a cup of tea at the back of the house, and it was just to explain that you know, he'd had a crash. It seemed to be serious, and he was taken to hospital. So my wife and I, Alex and I, we got in touch with John's partner Janet, and then we went down to the hospital, took her down to the hospital.
Initially got a very much a sinking feeling, because I knew that's not usual for Fred to phone me, and certainly not at this particular time, knowing where John was. And I would never have worried about him, I have to say, so I wouldn't have, but for whatever reason, I answered it with a lot of trepidation. And Fred immediately said to me, "Janet, are you on your own?" So, you know, in the medical world, if somebody asks you that, what's coming next is not going to be good. He just said John had had an accident, that he was seriously ill, and that the team were with him, and he was being transferred to Beaumont Hospital. So it rapidly became very clear to me that John's injuries were life-threatening and extremely serious. They worked extremely hard. The team on scene, the Motorcycle Ireland medical team, had they had done extremely well to get John alive to hospital because of his injuries, and as a family, we greatly value the fact that we had time with John. He may have been in intensive care, he may have been on life support, but we were still able to spend quality time with him just before he passed. And I know for us that we find that as a blessing, and it certainly helped us deal with the aftermath and the grief.
It was just truly awful. I just couldn't believe it, is the first thing. He was a friend, he was a colleague. I'd known him a long time. And we shared many of the same, you know, much the same vision for the future. And not being there was hard as well.
Do you know, being around road racing and seeing for so long, seeing a lot of people get hurt, some people killed, nothing really surprises you, really, in a lot of the cases. And whenever you do something that dangerous over and over again, the law of averages cuts in and works against you a lot of the time. But it was still a big shock with John, because he wasn't racing. He was the person there who looked after people. So I think there was for a lot of the riders as well, there was a great unease then afterwards as to, this is the guy that had their back. Well, what now?
I rode behind Fred. I felt John would want me to do that. We'd spent a lot of time with me riding pillion. We had a lot of very, very good memories on the bike. So I think it made me feel closer to him. I wanted to lead him home as opposed to watch his body coming home. And I was expecting that there would be some people there to pay the respects, but I don't think anything ever prepared you for what met us. Every single bridge from Dublin to we left at the Market Hill exit off the A1 at Newry was just covered in fire trucks, ambulance, you know, people with banners. There was I suppose a quiet comfort in that. You know, he really had made a difference in people's lives. And I'm very grateful for everyone who did come out, and as I said, the people power that then got behind us after that.
In March 2016, 8 months after John's death, it was announced that funding would be made available for an air ambulance in Northern Ireland. And in July 2017, that life-saving helicopter that he and others had fought for so long finally took to the skies. In its first year in operation, the air ambulance responded to over 500 emergencies across Northern Ireland and is proving to be a vital part of the health service.
For the future, it's important that the service is sustained and that it continues. Medicine does not and will not stand still. My belief is that the doctors and the paramedics involved in the helicopter service will adopt new interventions, new techniques, new drugs to further enhance the care they provide. And I think people now see the benefit that it brings, and I think it will grow and grow.
To see the delivery, to see what difference it makes out there, that's the quiet, humbling part. There's been recognition by those people that the service has helped and saved. And as I say, that'll happen through months and years to come. And I think it's great to look back for generations to see, you know, we were part of that, and just to say to ourselves, good job done.
We know that this service makes a huge difference because ultimately it saves lives. There are people alive today in Northern Ireland because of the air ambulance. There are patients who have been seriously injured, and we've really maximised their chances of making the best recovery they can from an accident because we've been involved.
Shifting air bilaterally, Stu?
Personally, it's been the best job I've ever done. For me to be part of this service and help develop this service to where it is now, I want to, in years to come, to see that aircraft fly over and go, I was part of that.
Well, let's put it this way. If one of my family or one of my friends or I was unfortunate enough to be involved in an incident, I would be so happy that one of my team members was coming to help.
The number of missions that we've flown and the number of people that we've been able to help speak for itself. The types of calls that we've been to, the number of times that we're now being asked for, certainly make the case that you know, we're going to hopefully be here for a long time yet.
I'm very honoured to be part of this team. We have managed to create something special. It's very rarely that you're privileged to be at the beginning of something, and I am very lucky.
How are we doing? The system works. It provides an excellent level of clinical care, which we have not had before. We were due this a long time ago, and through work from John Hines, through teams that have been behind the scenes, that is why we have the service now today and why it's working at the level it's at.
I think John would be very happy with the current level of trauma care now being provided in Northern Ireland. But I also know John would want us to do better. And therefore we will always try and do better. And I think that's the fitting tribute to John, is to remember, yes, we may have done well, but we can always strive to do better.
I firmly believe things happen in life for a reason. I felt there had to be something positive out of John's death, and I think probably looking back, his death put the topic into the public domain in a way that it never could have otherwise. All of a sudden we did have the world watching. The people really seemed to engage with the message John had about trauma care. This is his London Hems helicopter. His mum had bought this for his birthday and said maybe one day you'll get a real one. That gave me, I suppose, a purpose, a reason to get out of bed in the morning, that John wasn't here to finish this, and I felt that it was my responsibility to finish it. I suppose it was the last thing I felt I'd done for him, and it was, I suppose, for me, an extension of the love we'd felt for each other. I would always have been angry at myself if I hadn't have got it over the line for him.